Welcome. My name is Marissa Purcell, and I'm the head curator here at the James Whitcomb Riley Boyhood Home and Museum. Today I'm going to be talking about James Whitcomb Riley and Clara Botsford and what courtship was like during the Victorian era. But last, let's go ahead and dive into all the rules that was once expected to remember when one was visited by Cupid. To begin with, let's go ahead and get into the spirit and romance of the era. We're going to go ahead and start out with Riley's poem, An Old Sweetheart of Mine. An old sweetheart of mine, is this her presence here with me, or but a vain creation of a lover's memory? A fair elusive vision that would vanish into air, dared I even touch the silence with the whisper of a prayer? Nay, let me then believe in all the blended false and true, the semblance of the old love and the substance of the new. The then of changeless sunny days, the now of shower and shine, but love forever smiling as that old sweetheart of mine. This ever restful sense of home, though shouts ring in the hall, the easy chair, the old bookshelves, and prints along the wall, the rare habanas in their box, or gaunt churchwarden stem, that often wags above the jar diversely at them, as one who cons at evening over an album all alone, and muses on the faces of the friends that he has known. So I turn the leaves of fancy till in shadowy design I find the smiling features of an old sweetheart of mine. The lamplight seems to glimmer with a flicker of surprise as I turn it low to rest me of the dazzle in my eyes, and light my pipe in silence, save a sigh that seems to yoke its fate with my tobacco and to vanish with the smoke. 'Tis a fragrant retrospection for the loving thoughts that start into being are like perfume from the blossom of the heart, and to dream the old dreams over is a luxury divine, when my truant fancies wander with that old sweetheart of mine. Though I hear beneath my study like a fluttering of wings the voices of my children and the mother as she sings, I feel no twinge of conscience to deny me any theme, when care has cast her anchor in the harbor of a dream. In fact, to speak in earnest, I believe it adds a charm, to spice the good a trifle with a little dust of harm. For I find an extra flavor in memory's mellow wine, that makes me drink the deeper to that old sweetheart of mine. O childhood days enchanted, O the magic of the spring, with all the green boughs to blossom white, and all the bluebirds to sing, when all the air to toss and quaff made life a jubilee, and changed the children's song and laughs to shrieks of ecstasy. With eyes half closed and clouds that ooze from lips that taste as well the peppermint and cinnamon, I hear the old school bell, and from recess romp in again from Blackman's broken line, to smile behind my lesson at that old sweetheart of mine. A face of lily beauty, with a form of airy grace, floats out of my tobacco as a genie from a vase, and I thrill beneath the glances of a pair of azure eyes, as glowing as the summer, and as tender as the skies. I can see the pink sunbonnet, and the little checkered dress she wore when first I kissed her, and she answered the caress with the written declaration that, as surely as the vine grew round the stump, she loved me, that old sweetheart of mine. Again I made her presents in a really helpless way, the big Rhode Island greening, I was hungry too that day. But I follow her from spelling with her hand behind her so, and I slip the apple in it, and the teacher doesn't know. I give my treasures to her, all my pencil, blue and red, and if little girls played marbles, mine should be all hers instead. But she gave me her photograph, and printed ever thine, across the back in blue and red, that old sweetheart of mine. And again I feel the pressure of her slender little hand, as we used to talk together of the future we had planned, when I should be a poet, and with nothing else to do, but write the tender verses that she set the music to. When we should live together in a cozy little cot, hid in a nest of roses with a fairy garden spot, where the vines were ever fruited, and the weather ever fine, and the birds ever singing for that old sweetheart of mine. When I should be her lover forever and a day, and she my faithful sweetheart till the golden hair was gray, and we should be so happy that when either's lips were dumb, they would not smile in heaven till the other's kiss had come. But my dream is broken by a step upon the stair, and the door is softly opened, and my wife is standing there. Yet with eagerness and rapture all my visions I resign, to greet the living presence of that old sweetheart of mine. So, now that we are kind of transported back into time and kind of are in a romantic mood, let's go ahead and talk about what was expected during the Victorian period if you were courting. So we're going to go ahead and talk about what was expected of women. As a young lady, you were expected to let the man do the pursuing of affection. If you were a woman, that basically meant that you were supposed to just kind of stand by, and if a man was interested, he would come to you. And I know for some of us, we go, well, that, sometimes that might take a while, but during the Victorian period, that is what was encouraged. Quite frankly, if you were going around throwing yourself as at a man, you were ill-bred. According to several manner books of that time period, any woman who would go ahead and start pursuing the fellow must be ill-bred in manners, just ill-bred in temperament, ill-bred in general. As a woman, you were to never go anywhere without a chaperone. You were to, as a young lady, you were to be either going out with other young ladies your age, or preferably you were going out with a woman who was older than you, such as an aunt or somebody who was what they would consider at the time an old spinster. So maybe you were going out with a spinster who was hired to be your companion. But the best person who was to be your chaperone was to be a male family relative. So a brother, father, uncle, those were the best chaperones. Proper ladies never to go anywhere without one, especially if she is to come into contact with a gentleman. And they, if you did have to go out alone without a chaperone, you certainly shouldn't be stopping to talk with a gentleman. You need to keep walking. Otherwise, if you stop to talk to a gentleman without anybody being your chaperone, you could be getting into trouble. You could be up to nefarious things. A young lady who's not engaged can receive visits from any unmarried gentleman she so desired. Once she was engaged, however, she should no longer entertain unmarried men in that manner. Unmarried gentlemen, if they are pursuing you, it's fair and open game. They are competing with each other, and you can receive any unmarried gentleman you so chose, because you are the one that is sitting around, and they're the ones that have to come and try to gain your affection. But if you are promised to another gentleman and you are planning on getting married, you should no longer talk to unmarried gentlemen in the same manner you would have. It's very bad breeding if you do. And one must not, as a young woman, encourage a proposal only to then reject it. It is a sign of ill breeding. Whether or not you meant to or did mean to, encouraging a man to propose to you just to turn him down is not ideal. Now, obviously, there will be some men who will go ahead and propose when your affections were never given to him, but if you showed him any of the slightest affection and then turn it down, shame on you. Now, what was expected of men? The do's and the don'ts. So the do's: respect the woman you're courting. One should make a thorough acquaintance before proposing marriage. It is very bad of a gentleman to propose marriage after knowing a lady only a little while. It is better to get to know her before you actually do propose marriage, because you want to make sure that you are compatible with each other. If you must break an engagement, do so by letter and ask for your correspondence back. For heaven's sakes, if you do have to break off an engagement with a young lady, do so by letter, because if you do it in person, it's only going to embarrass you and it's only going to embarrass her. By far better to end things and avoid hurt feelings if you break it off in that manner. Of course, we know better that there probably would still be bad feelings, but this is the easiest way to do it. The don'ts. If you're a gentleman, do not court other women if you're engaged to a woman. That should be common sense, but obviously for some gentlemen of the time period, they needed to be reminded. Courting other women when you're engaged not only shows your future wife that you don't necessarily respect her, but that your interests can wander, and that's not a good thing. Do not press an unwelcome suit. If the woman has kind of given you the point that she does not want your attention, you should not pursue her. And of course, as we mentioned before, do not propose your engagement too swiftly. Another important thing to remember during courtship during the Victorian period was fan etiquette. This was during the time women were carrying fans. Obviously, back in the Victorian period, we did not have air conditioning, we did not have furnaces, so they had no way of controlling the temperatures. Often women would carry fans with them to keep cool, but fans also had an entirely different reason for women to carry them, and part of it was there was a whole fan etiquette that went around with women carrying a fan, and the fans would often give different messages, especially if a woman was courting a gentleman. So some examples of fan etiquette would be if you were carrying a fan in the left hand, signified that a woman was desirous of making their acquaintance. Allowing the fan to rest on the right cheek meant yes, and on the left, no. Further down the line, drawing a fan across the eyes meant I'm sorry. Dropping a fan meant we could be friends. Imagine getting friend-zoned in the way by dropping a fan. Placing the handle of the fan to the lips meant kiss me. Twirling a fan in the left hand meant I wish to be rid of you. Twirling a fan in the right hand meant I love another. And an open fan held in the right hand in front of the face meant follow me. Now these are only a few, and I do say a few, of the fan etiquette for fans. There's a lot more rules as well, a lot more different meanings, but these were some of the more important ones when you were courting a woman. Just by the fan alone, a man could understand what a woman was trying to tell him. It was almost like Morse code, but for courting. Again, a different thing that could convey a message to someone that you are courting would be language of flowers. So different flowers mean different things, especially during the Victorian period. And if you were presented a flower by your significant other, you might know how they're feeling about you that day. So for instance, this is again just a few of the flowers and a few of their meanings. If you were presented with an amaryllis, it meant that your beau thought you were a splendid beauty. If you were presented a hollyhock, you were supposed to be fruitful. Lavender, on the other hand, meant that they did not trust you. It meant distrust. So you had done something to make your beau distrust you. Maybe he heard that you were going out with Johnny Barnes the other night, and now he doesn't trust you anymore. Lilac meant youth. Rosebud moss meant that they were confessing their love. And sage meant that they were holding you in high esteem. So, different flowers mean, as I said, different things. Flowers were something that most people during the Victorian period used. Flowers could be used not only by the upper echelons in society, but by the lower classes as well. For women, during the Victorian period, the manner books discouraged accepting gifts from the people that you were courting. The only time a woman was supposed to accept a gift from her beau was after they were already engaged, because as the woman, you did not want to be owing them a debt for receiving the gift, especially if you then ended up not courting them anymore. But flowers were very inexpensive. Most people could find them on the side of the road, so receiving flowers as a gift was acceptable. It was an acceptable thing to do, and is a tradition that has carried on today. Also, something that came up during the Victorian period was Victorian Valentine cards. So Victorians did give Valentine cards to their sweethearts. We have an example here of a Victorian Valentine card with the woman in the middle and the heart, St. Valentine's greeting. And it was a way to let loved ones know that you were thinking of them, especially your sweetheart, and to let them know that they were always in your thoughts, as well as your romantic feelings for them. However, if you jilted perhaps your beau, or you jilted somebody who was interested in you, you may receive a Victorian vinegar valentine. Vinegar valentines was their way of showing how displeased or how the heart yearned even after being rejected by someone. Or maybe they were just plain mad. So if this example of Victorian Valentine has a gentleman with a wounded heart, and it says, "'Twas said you share your love with many, but I believe you haven't had any, at least enough to give away. You keep it for yourself," they say. In other words, this particular Valentine is saying that really you say you love people, but you really don't. And you certainly don't love me. Can you imagine getting a vinegar valentine? That would be quite the statement, all right. And I'm not so sure it's actually the way to win any hearts. So that leaves us to James Whitcomb Riley and Clara Botsford. James Whitcomb Riley and Clara Botsford first met when she came to teach in Greenfield. She ended up boarding at the Riley residence, which was the old seminary house here in Greenfield. Reuben owned it and was renting out some rooms, and Riley was still living at home at the time. During that time period, they became acquainted. They ended up courting for the year she was there, but then ended up breaking it off. However, they ended up rekindling their romance, and they would end up courting on and off again for the next 12 years. They were very much in love with each other. Their letters to each other are extremely passionate. When you read their love letters that James Whitcomb Riley sent to Clara, especially, you can tell what a passion that he had for her. He loved her a lot. He would call her pet names. In fact, sometimes Riley, in his letters, especially after they became engaged, would refer to her as his wife. They did end up becoming engaged. They were engaged for a long time. However, there were some problems with the engagement. Riley would see and write to other women during their courtship, which, as we learned earlier, that is a big no-no. They would often be alone together, which would spark rumors, especially hurting Clara Botsford's reputation. Riley would go and visit her on her family farm, and he would play the guitar for her, and they would spend time, but a lot of time they would often be alone. That's very dangerous for a woman, as we talked about earlier with what was expected of a woman. Clara, quite frankly, was getting frustrated waiting for Riley to get his act together. They became engaged, but they were engaged before Riley really became famous as the Hoosier poet. And he was struggling. He was a sign painter, and then he was struggling to become a poet. And he wasn't ready to make the commitment yet. He wanted to make sure that he was well established, that he was financially stable, that he had a career before he actually married Clara. Meanwhile, Clara's getting older, and especially in those days, if you were above a certain age as a woman, you would be considered an old maid, a spinster. And Clara was rapidly approaching that age, especially towards the latter end of their engagement. And so she was starting to get frustrated that there was not a wedding date set. Clara was, in certain cases, rightly so, very suspicious of Riley while he was off touring away. Riley would go and court other women while he was on tour. And this often would lead Clara to be jealous. And there were some cases where she would be jealous and he hadn't seen another woman, but because he had done it before, she would accuse him of it, and it led to multiple arguments. Riley had trouble reeling in his drinking problem. Riley did have an alcohol problem. He wasn't necessarily what we would consider a alcoholic classically, but he would go on binges from time to time. And when he did, he went all out, and that was very bothersome to Clara. And both of them had a temper. Riley had a short fuse, and Clara Botsford had a short fuse, which meant that any problems they talked about usually would result in explosions. There was some, as we mentioned, the vinegar Valentine. I would say that Riley probably offered the most vicious vinegar Valentine you could ever imagine during one of the times where they were arguing a little bit, and it was around Valentine's Day. And he wrote a poem called The Werewife. And he had it published in a paper, and he wrote to Clara Botsford and told her about it, and told her that it was written for her, and that's how he felt about her, and how she was pushing him, making him feel like he was being forced into the marriage when, they were engaged. They perhaps got engaged a little too quickly. That was another instance of Riley perhaps jumping the gun. But he felt like she was pushing for the marriage, and that he wasn't quite ready for it. He also didn't like the fact that she was using her temper against him either. So we're going to go ahead and read Mr. Riley's version of The Werewife so we can see what kind of temper James Whitcomb Riley had when it came to sharing his feelings with Clara Botsford. And I have to tell you right now that if I had received this type of vinegar Valentine, I probably would have ended my relationship with James Whitcomb Riley there and then, but Clara had a little bit more patience than I did. So here's The Werewife. The Werewife, she came to me in a dazzling guise of gleaming tresses and glimmering eyes, with long limp lashes that drooped and made, for their baleful glances, bowers of shade, and a face so white and sleek, that the roses blooming in either cheek flamed and burned with a crimson glow, redder than ruddiest roses blow, redder than blood of the roses known, that autumn spills in the drifted snow. And what could my fluttering, moth-winged soul do but hover in her control, with its little bewildered bead eyes fixed, where the gold and the white and the crimson mixed? And when the tune of her low laugh went up from that ivory instrument, that you would have called her throat, I swear, the notes built nests in her gilded hair, and nestled and whistled and twittered there, and wooed me and won me to my despair. And thus it was that she lured me on, till the latest gasp of my love was gone, and my soul lay dead with a loathing face, turned in vain from her dread embrace. For even its poor dead eyes could see her sharp teeth sheathed in the flesh of me, and her dripping lips, as she turned to shake the red froth off that her greed did make, as my heart gripped hold of a deathless ache, and the kiss of her stung like the fang of a snake. Now that is a vinegar Valentine. The other thing that kind of hindered their relationship was Riley, it seemed, often needed validation that someone was in his corner. Riley would every now and then have a bit of he needed confidence boosters. He needed somebody to tell him he was on the right track, he was doing a good job. The thing was, Clara needed someone to do that for her. And unfortunately, both of them were not able to validate each other to the level that each other needed. There's no excuse for Riley seeing other women during his engagement, but I do believe that that's what he was doing. I do believe his entire love went to Clara Botsford. he was in love with her, but he was also trying to seek the validation for other women. And Clara took out the fact that she was not receiving hers at Riley. And that was a setup for an explosion and a break. So unfortunately, the star-crossed lovers and what could have been, after 12 years on and off and a long engagement, James Whitcomb Riley did write, and this is where he actually did follow the Manor books. He did write to Clara Botsford and end the engagement. He sent her letters back to her and asked for his back, which she did not give him his letters back. She kept them. So he ended it with her. I do believe that they were very much in love. I just think as they continued to grow and mature, they ended up growing in separate directions, unfortunately. James Whitcomb Riley, as we know, ended up being the Hoosier poet. He went on to great fame. He ended up being so famous that we remember him today. He never married, though. I do believe Clara was his one true love and that it just never worked out. Clara Botsford, on the other hand, did get married. She married a bartender, but unfortunately it was not a happy marriage. Her children died young, and she died poor. So it was a sad ending for Clara. But I do believe that if circumstances had been different, if Riley may have become famous earlier, maybe neither of them had quite the problems that either of them had, I do think that they would have gotten married. So with that, if you do have any questions about Clara Botsford or James Whitcomb Riley in more detail, please feel free to reach out to us at the James Whitcomb Riley Boyhood Home and Museum. You can do that by emailing us at jwriley@greenfield.org, or you can go ahead and give us a phone call at 317-462-8539, and we'd be happy to answer those questions. So, with that, I'm going to go ahead and tell you thank you for listening to me talk about an old sweetheart of mine, Clara Botsford and James Whitcomb Riley's courtship, as well as what was expected of you during the Victorian period. And with that, we'll hope that you give us a like, give us a subscribe, and we hopefully will see you next time. Thank you.